All right, Rabbi will say good morning, good morning. Let us, Mesillas Hashem, continue. We have the great zuchus today to Mesillas Hashem finish up Parak Yud Gimel, finish chapter 13 Mesillas Yesharim. So today, the 20th of Kislev, December 14th, we are picking up Acha Prishos Hara. So if you remember again, a few days ago, the Ramchal made the observation that there are two different forms of Prishos. There's what we call positive Prishos and destructive Prishos. Remember again, the Ramchal has outlined for us what the definition of positive Prishos is, and now the chapter ends with a discussion of this destructive Prishos. Therefore the Ramchal writes, Acha Prishos Hara hu kiderech hagoyim hascholim. He says, if you want to see an example of destructive Prishos, negative Prishos, says you could often find it amongst the Gentile nations. Asher lo dai she'inam lochim min ha'olam ha'she'in lam hechrich bo, ela shekvar yimnu'u atzmam games ha'muchrach v'yasru gufam b'yisurim udvarim zvarim asher lo chafetz b'hem Hashem klal. So what do? Just to understand, so what Ramchal is describing over here is essentially life asceticism, being an ascetic, and thinking that being an ascetic is the way to go ahead and come to God. So the Ramchal says, it's bad enough, of course they don't indulge in extras, but they don't even avail themselves of what is necessary in order to be able to lead a normal, healthy human life. They afflict their bodies with all different types of afflictions and strange practices that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want. Ela adrabah. So what do Chazal want? What do Chazal want? Ela adrabah. So we'll say, so it's an incredible idea, and you definitely find this amongst, again, other religions and other nations, which is this mindset that in order to come close to God, piety requires deprivation. Right? Now, by the way, we, of course, believe in that in some way as well. That's called positive prishos. But they take it to an extreme where ultimately, again, somehow punishing self-deprivation is the pathway to piety. And the Ramchal says that's absolutely false. Ela adrabah. Just the opposite is true. He said, adrabah, chachamim amru, asher li adam sheyisagif atzmo. Chazal said, a person is not permitted to go ahead and afflict themselves. Soon again, we'll listen to this incredible idea. When it comes to tzedakah, the Ramchal quotes the Yerushalmi who says, Kol mi shetzarech litol ve'eino notel harei ze shofech damim. If someone needs to take tzedakah, but they don't take tzedakah, it's as if they're going ahead and spilling blood. In other words, what that idea is, if you need something, and you don't take it, there's liability, there's culpability with that. Such an incredible idea. V'chin amru, lenefesh chaya, neshama shenasata bi hachaye osa. It's beautiful. So again, the Medrash quotes the idea, the pasuk that says Hashem created man, lenefesh chaya, living being. And again, Chazal teach us, Hashem says to us, the neshama that I gave you, make sure to sustain it. How do you sustain your neshama? So in addition, of course, to dynamic spiritual activity, you take care of your body. By going ahead and taking care of your body, giving your body ultimately, again, what it needs. So again, in that way, one gives life to the neshama. Va'amru kol yoshev b'tainis nikrachote. Chazal said, whoever goes ahead and sits in a sustained state of fasting is called a sinner. So the ha'vamidu b'delo matzim mitzaer nafshe. Now, sometimes fasting could be a good thing, and sometimes indeed fasting can be the pathway to piety. But today, Chazal explains the way that Chazal explained is referring to someone who's not good at fasting. So someone who's not good at fasting, but subjects himself to ongoing fasting, ultimately, again, that's deprivation, and that's unhealthy. The Hillel used to say, Gomel nafsho ish chased. That literally, what does this mean? Gomel nafsho ish chased. So literally what it means is, he who gives to his soul is a man of chesed, is a man of charity, a man of kindness. What does this refer to? Alachilas haboker. So this refers to having breakfast. Having breakfast. What does it mean to be the kind of person who does good for himself, a gomel chesed for himself? Person who has breakfast. Vayarochetz panav yadav l'chvod kono. And again, a person who washes his body as a form of covet, as a form of honor for his creator. Kavachomer midiyoknos hamalachim. And again, this was a kavachomer from the malachim. The same way the malachim are fashioned in a beautiful way. So Hillel used to say the same idea. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to take care of our physicality. So Hillel would say, eat right? Eat healthy, sustain your body. make sure your body remains clean, proper hygiene. All of these are things in which we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. So you see the Ramchal painting this picture, that physical deprivation. So I will say, so again, you begin to see how there's like this fine line. Because positive Prishus says, forbids certain things to yourself. There might be things that are permitted, but you should abstain. You should abstain from it. But ultimately, in order to create for yourself proper protective barriers. Proper protective barriers. At the same time, they're creating too much of a life, of an ascetic life. Too much of depriving myself of things which are considered to be core necessities, basic necessities, to be a happy, healthy, functional person. That's sinful in and of itself. That's the destructive prishos. Let's finish up. Haridachal klala amiti. So it says Ramchal, here's the rule. Here it is, I will say. Shekoma she'eno mukhrach la'adam minyane ha'olam hazeh, ra'yi sheyifrosh mehem. Whatever is not necessary for a person in this world, you should do without it. Whatever is necessary, for whatever the reason you think it's necessary, since you need it, if you go ahead and abstain from it, this is called sinful. And I will say, now remember again, the Ramchal says that this is the rule, but of course, this is probably the most ambiguous rule, right? You've ever seen all those, what's necessary? So again, remember, the Ramchal already spoke about this. You're right. You're absolutely right. Prishus, by definition, is subjective. It's totally subjective. I have to look at my life, and what I have to look at, ultimately, again, is what do I need? And I will say, what the Ramchal is saying is, I understand, the word need is a very expansive word. What do I need? What do I need? I need a piece of bread, shelter, and water. Right? That's what I need in order to survive. Obviously, what Ramchal is saying is, look at your life. Really, I think the first step to this is, are there areas of acute excess? Are there areas of acute excess? And if there are areas of acute excess, let me identify them, and now let me figure out ultimately again what I need to do to rein that in. Because areas of acute excess, that's where I stand the greatest amount of danger of that over excess. That excess ultimately leads me down the wrong path. So perhaps that's really where I start. Acute excess. How do I rein that in a little bit? And then slowly but surely, I have to look at the multiple areas of my life, figure out where, again, there is some level of excess. And I will say, by the way, there might be some areas of excess that are not as acute, and therefore I don't have to deal with it right now. But there might be other areas where it's much more acute. But again, the Midah of Prishus says, wherever in your life, you're doing more than what's necessary in terms of means in a material way. So identify that, understand the existential danger that exists in that, and begin to create a life plan. On the other hand, chas v'shalom, don't go ahead and engage in a life of asceticism, or for that matter, again, personalistic deprivation. That's never going to work very well, and in fact, that's against the Ratzon Hashem. Hine zeklal memon. Ramchal says, this is a tried and tested rule. He writes, Ach mishpat hapratim, al pi haklal hazeh, Eino Masr Ella al Shikol Hadas Ulefi Sichla Yehulalish. The Ramchal says, look, I can't map this out for you. Right? The rule is true. The rule I could articulate. The application of the rule, you're going to have to figure out. Right? Because the application of Oseh, as we know, is totally and fundamentally subjective. It's impossible to outline all of the details, for they are many. And it's impossible, again, to really wrap my head around everything. Rather, each matter in its own time. So again, I just want to point out, we're not finished with Prishos yet. Remember, again, we still have to get into we're going to delve into the actual details of it. But as a rule, the Ramchal has articulated the rule. The rule is, anything you don't really need in life, you should try to cut back. Just try to cut back. Again, what's considered a necessity versus a luxury? Subjective. What are my needs? Subjective. Rebbe say, but like so much of Mesillas Yesharim, what's the goal? What's the Rebbe say? What's the goal of Mesillas Yesharim? The goal takes us all the way back to the beginning. What was the first part of Mesillas Yesharim? Zehiros. It's just to live life with awareness. so much of what we're supposed to accomplish over here is just think about it. So say, I'll tell you, I've seen it in my own life. Since we started learning this midah of prishus, there were a couple of things that came up that I really said to myself, like, do I need this? Do I want it? I want it. Do I need it? Not big things, like little things that you just would never. Now, sometimes I said yes, right? Yeah, I do need it, right? And other times it's just like, you know what? I don't need it now. Whether that's gashmios or whether it's pleasures, it's interesting, right? It's just an interesting way to kind of look at life. Again, does it mean suddenly again that a person has drawn the line between necessity and luxury? No, that's something we struggle with throughout life. But at least I'm thinking about it. And at least I'm giving some thought to maybe the idea that, you know what? I need to create for myself certain boundaries. I do. I need to really think about these things. Because if I don't think about it, I run the risk of really lapsing into a lifestyle of just uncontrolled consumption, and that gets me into all kinds of dangers. So both saying, Mazel Tov on finishing Parak Yud Gimel. Shkoyach everyone. Mesillas Hashem v'Shatom Mesillas. Tomorrow we begin Parak Yud Daled, which is titled Bechelkei HaPrishos, the actual multiple aspects of Prishos. Shkoyach both saying.